Okay, I think we are live. Yeah, so we're live. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for everyone joining this webinar with Martins from Mintos. My name is Pepe. I'm VP of International at Crowdcube. So we are an equity crowdfunding platform, as you might know. Every one of you are attending today. And today we are here with Mintos, who is obviously, and you also know, who is successfully raising their raise on Crowdcube since Monday. It's been an amazing week for everyone. We will go to that in a minute with Martins. First of all, and before starting this webinar, please let me highlight that investments into startups are high-risk investments, so you should please diversify and invest in companies as part of a diversified portfolio. This is a non-liquid asset, so please invest aware and read all the information available on the Crowdcube page before making an investment decision. Everyone can make questions through the link provided in the YouTube description. We will go through the questions after our conversation, and we will take between 15 and 20 minutes. We will cover some of the topics that we've seen in the pitch page on Crowdcube, and we will cover also the questions that you are making through this channel. So, Martins, hi, and nice to see you again. It's been intense weeks for us, for everyone. But what an amazing race, right?
It's been definitely a lot of interest. So obviously we are very thrilled about the interest and support from our community and other investors. So the first day was really unexpected, perhaps. So we didn't expect maybe that much interest, but we always believed that we are on a good path and we have built a good platform to go from here. So in a way, it's unexpected. On the other, it's basically just reconfirming what we have been believing ourselves internally. But yeah, definitely, indeed, we have spent a lot of time with you, I guess, as well. So
yeah, it's been. I gotta tell, I've been working in Crowdcube 6 years now, and this is the most impressive raise I've been working with so far. And we have the stats. You guys also just broke the records on non-UK companies raising through equity crowdfunding. This is the biggest ever in history, which is easy to say, not easy to achieve in Europe, by both investment and also by number of investors, which is probably the most important part of this exercise and this race we're doing, right? Talking to your community and see the engagement you guys have with your audiences, your customers, your users, your partners, all your stakeholders who have been invited to be part of Mintos and now are something else than not only users. And I'm sure that's going to help the company in the future. So let's begin. For those who don't know pretty much Mintos, let's go through Mintos, a bit of the story behind Mintos and what you guys have achieved so far. I think let's start through that.
Sure. Happy to. Well, at the end of the day, what we do at Mintos, we bring a new alternative investment type to retail investors, and that investment type is loans, both consumer loans and small business loans. We've been around already for 5 years. So we started in 2015 when we launched a platform. The first couple of years were basically trying to understand how to build it, if what we do makes sense or not. And only, I would say, like in 2018 and specifically in 2019, we really significantly scaled up. And so far, investors have funded already almost 6 billion euros of loans. So it's, to be precise, 5.7 billion euros of loans. And then we have around 340,000 retail investors. What they do come on the marketplace. The loan supply is brought to the marketplace by different lending companies. So those are the lending companies which do lend money in different geographies. So we have around 60 different lending companies from 30 plus different countries, and they do lend money in those countries. And then basically once the money is lent to the borrower, they place it on the Mintos, and then that loan is available for investment. Once investors invest, when the borrowers make a repayment, then the investors receive capital plus interest on their capital. And in that way, and basically they can add to their investment portfolio another asset class which has not been actually that easy to come by for retail investors.
Completely agree. And I have to disclose, I've been using Mintos for a couple of years now with friends, and it's pretty impressive what you've achieved so far. And it's very accessible, it's very easy to use. And some of the things that impressed me the most from Mintos is how you guys have been growing so rapidly, but not only in the Baltics and in the Nordics area, but in Europe. It's impressive. Yesterday we checked the investor list on your raise on Crowdcube, and we have 91 countries, people from 91 countries investing in Mintos, which shows also how much exposure you guys have in many countries. And I wonder, you have we see that you guys have achieved a 45% market share in Europe. What do you think has been the reasons to achieve that, and what's the key differentiator between Mintos and other platforms?
I think the key is really the business model. So we don't originate the loans ourselves. So instead, we look for the lending companies who do originate the loans. They bring the loans on the marketplace, and that means that investors have a super wide offering. So we would say unmatched loan supply. So it's from different countries, different borrower segments, different loan types, different lending companies originating the loan. So that's, I would say, the key is in the business model, that basically we can bring a lot of loan supply to the marketplace. And then on the opposite side, for the lending companies, so we serve as additional funding source. So for them, none of them is what you would call a P2P lender. So they don't have access to retail investors. Instead, they connect to Mintos and they get access today, which is like 340,000 strong investor base from day one. And that is huge value for the lending companies. And because of this business model, so there's been certainly indirect network effects, meaning that the more lending companies or the more loan supply we bring on the marketplace, the more investors come to Mintos. The more investors we have on Mintos, the more loan supply we can bring on the marketplace. So, and that has helped us to scale significantly and reach when it comes to total funded loans in Europe. So we are the market leader with, according to the latest data, so we hold around exactly like a bit less than half of the market share in Europe.
That's an impressive figure, and we as Crowdcube as well, we understand the difficulties to achieve that market share. We within the fintech sector, both equity and lending platforms have been a hot topic during the last years, and I think we both have been doing a great job. Our teams are doing a great job to lead the market, to show also the regulators and the stakeholders how this works and how important it is to democratize this asset class, both in lending and equity. And one of the key topics is also regulation. It's been a topic also in some of the questions in your pitch page, something we've been talking through, we've been talking about as well. For us, it's a big topic as well. Regulations are different in countries, in each country, especially in Europe. And I wonder, I'm sure many people wonder, what's your plans on regulation? What are your next steps in the future?
And that's also actually the reason why we are now fundraising. So it is that we are on the way of becoming fully regulated marketplace. So we are in the final stages of application with a regulator. So we are applying for investment firm license and electronic money institution license, both of which will allow us to work on passporting basis across Europe. and help to reach out to more customers and bring also new products to the customer base which we have. It's definitely something which we look forward to. So we expect it to finalize in early next year, and that's why we are fundraising. So we are doing the crowdfunding now today, engaging our community as well, and we are also planning the venture capital round very soon. So those are the reasons that basically the regulatory licenses are the reason where we see that with them we will be able to continue our journey, and we plan to really build a bigger marketplace on both sides, and then add new products.
Yeah, indeed. Sometimes it's a pain. We know that, and we know here at Crowdcube as well, it's regulation barriers are difficult to tackle, but it's something we have to live with, and it brings a lot of confidence among both investors and loans.
I agree. I think it's actually necessary. So it's not that you have to live with it. It's actually something which you need, and it brings obviously oversight of the operations. It also gives just credibility to the investor, but also in our case also to the lending companies who use us. So it's definitely something which we've been supporting. We've been working on it for quite a while, and we are very happy now to be in the kind of final stages of the process. And I definitely think that for us, what we do is bringing a Mintos mainstream. Regulation is just something which you have to have. It's
exactly.
Fully regulated setup is something which you have to have. So without that, well, it's very hard to go mainstream. And I think the regulation is, at the end of the day, it's there for the reason. It's to protect the customers, and that are good kind of processes and procedures which you have to follow, which of course makes sense. I mean, once you start dealing with people money, and it's a lot of money, so the regulation is just something which you have to have.
Exactly, completely agree. So once you have the regulation, you have the market share, there's also a couple of new products we've seen you are disclosing in this fundraising, which looks exciting from my point of view. Some of those are like cards, IBAN. So what's the reasoning behind the decision of launching these new products? How do you plan to, and when do you plan to launch it, and how is this going?
Yeah. So the products which you mentioned is part of our broader vision. So our broader vision is, which gonna take longer, obviously, to get there, but eventually we see us becoming primary financial relationship to the next generation of investors. So those who want to invest and so forth, and save. So basically, for them, provide products which financial products which they are seeking to have. So. But before that, so obviously there's a lot of work, and we will continue to core offering of ours is bringing in the new alternative investment type to investors, so in a form of loans. So we're gonna expand the loan offering, the same going even wider offering, meaning we plan to expand in that. So meaning lower risk and well also of course lower return loans is something which we are working on. And then, when it comes to new products, it's basically the ones you mentioned is which we are already working on, and their launch is subject to us getting the license. So once we get the license, so we will roll out them as quickly as we possibly can. So and those are IBAN account and the Mintos debit card. So those two are basically backbone in a way. So it's more for investors to actually get the IBAN account, which you can use as any other IBAN account, so that they get the access to the money which is not invested. On top of that, you add the Mintos debit card. So again, so that it gives you easier access to the money which is not invested. And then we also are looking to add additional, more traditional investment opportunities, such as ETFs. So what we see is that Mintos and loans, more specifically, they create only, of course, and that's what we educate investors, they should create a part of a well-diversified portfolio. So they might have ETFs, they might have some bonds, maybe some of them have invested through Crowdcube in some equity. They do have loans. They might have some crypto or whatnot. Their whole investment portfolio. So with ETFs, we see that actually also with the pandemic in 2020, we saw that investors scaled back some of their investments in loans, and they basically rebalanced to ETFs. And when we talk with investors, they actually are rather excited about having one stop where they can actually build a portfolio, more complete portfolio, which will be sure the primary what we offer is loans as something which you cannot really get anywhere else. But then you, on top of that, well, why do you need like several platforms to invest in ETFs, which is very traditional investment product, super standardized, and it's basically it's very commodity type of product. So these days you can buy ETF from the bank, you can buy from several brokers. At the end of the day, it's kind of all the same. It's an ETF underlying is the same. So that's what we're working on as well, and gonna roll out it. So as soon as we get the license, so we're gonna start working on rolling it out.
Awesome. I look forward for the card, and I'm sure some of my friends as well. So that looks really impressive. Another question that we have mentioned, actually, we've been speaking about this, and as we as well are increasingly going to new markets on Crowdcube, and we know that the challenges from a tech and product perspective, not only from a culture perspective or regulatory, which is there, but the product and market, tech and product and market fit for fintech companies, regulated fintech companies, it's challenging and requires resources and a great team behind, obviously. And I think you guys have done something which is pretty unique, which is a product which works in many countries. It's multi-language, multi-currency. It's super user-friendly. It works in app and in phones. It's great. And I wonder so you have a big presence in Europe, a big presence in Germany. We've seen that as well. What's next in terms of jurisdictions, countries? What are your plans there?
When it comes to the to building the multi-language and basically expanding to more countries is actually something. While we do it's something because we do ourselves, we come from a small country. So we do come from Latvia. It's like a country of 2 million people. So from get-go, you are actually thinking of building something outside of the country, at least in the regional level for us. So for me specifically, outside, I was always kind of looking to build something which is at least Europe level, if not like global level. So we definitely were from the day one looking to expand globally. So that's something which is just in our DNA. And then it's when we look going forward, so we have to look on both sides. So we definitely, when it comes to the investor side, we're going to continue focusing on the European market. So that will be our main focus. So in the countries where we are already strong, but also with the help of licenses, where we can basically reach more customers. So that's something which we're going to do on the investor side. And then when it comes on the loan supply side, so we are really a mirror of what's happening in alternative lending space. So and instead of countries, we much rather talk about the regions. So we definitely see some activity and good activity. Of course, the COVID put everything on pause. So we have to realize that. So a lot of things obviously have been put on pause. Now with the kind of vaccines in sight and perhaps the virus subsiding, so that's gonna kind of be unpaused. But Southeast Asia for sure, the same actually Central Asia, Latin America for sure. Africa, it's still actually definitely everyone is kind of excited about that, but it's kind of all the time. Everybody expects that it's gonna boom when it comes to lending, but it kind of takes longer. But Africa as well, and well, we won't forget about Europe. So especially when it comes to maybe not when it comes to loan supply, it's going to be less about the countries where the banks are dominating the lending, more about the countries where there is more alternative lending. So in that sense, nothing has changed from our day one. So we are building a global marketplace, and eventually we see it as a global, basically marketplace, which is available for investors globally, and also the loan supply coming globally.
Yeah, and going through the both sides of the marketplace, right? It's always this dilemma in marketplaces where to focus now. Are we focusing more? You can focus on both, obviously, but it's always you need to prioritize one side of the marketplace. So what do you think is now the priority for Mintos to focus with? Investor side, loan side.
At this stage, it's obviously investor side. So for sure, investor side is something. But first of all, we have to explain what it is new alternative investment type as a loan.
Yeah.
So for many, it's about educating that you can invest in loans in this and that way, that you should build it as a diversified portfolio. That should be part of well-diversified portfolio. So, and really kind of working on investors and visual investors, and also just putting this opportunity in the front of investors is something which also takes quite a bit of effort. So for sure, in the short term to medium term, it's investors. And then if we look though in the long term, then perhaps that will be the limiting factor, or basically the more challenge will be how much loan supply we can actually bring on the market. So in general, the investment side is much larger. Well, it's huge. The retail investment side is huge. So even if you just look at the Europe, it's a huge market. Loan supply side is also huge, but well, in the long term, perhaps the loan supply might be a more limiting factor. So these days, it is investors, but as a two-sided marketplace, it's all the time changing. So it's kind of all the time the challenge which you have is to manage growth in a balanced way, so that we actually add more. Well, it doesn't make sense to add too much loan supply when we don't have enough investors. Also doesn't make sense to go out and do a lot of investor acquisition when we don't have the loan supply available. So it's kind of working on both sides at the same time. But well, I would say this at this moment is more kind of investor side for sure.
Yeah, same. Completely emphasize with that, and going also to the origination side of the marketplace. It's also tricky for us. We have origination of startups, of scale-ups, and private companies going to Crowdcube. In your case, loan originators that are supplying loans into Mintos, and that's become a topic in the past, and we also emphasize with that because during the last months there have been some underlying loans and some difficult recoveries for some loans for investors, and that's part of the game. That's also something we have to handle at Crowdcube when companies go into administration and you lose your investment. That's why we should always emphasize the diversification message and do your own due diligence as well. What are your plans on that side of the marketplace? How do you tackle those challenges you have with loan originators, and also to explain investors how this works, and what more your priorities on that?
Sure. I mean, obviously 2020 was a challenging year for us as well. So we saw that the number of loans which went into the recovery definitely was like good part of the loans ended up there. But obviously we also do have to look at the broader picture and put everything in the context. So when we look at the loan portfolio, so it's still maybe after all the recoveries, we will be looking perhaps at less than 1 year of the profits for most of investors if they are diversified. So also we have to look into the context, which is we didn't have any recoveries for 5 years, and now when the economic crisis hit and some other risks materialized, obviously we do have recoveries in 2020. It's, well, by no means it's not going to be kind of the best year, right? So but when we combine it with like 5 years of operations before, when we didn't have any recoveries, and add another 6 years, and we look at the whole, then actually we still are looking at the rather healthy returns after expected defaults. Of course, for us, it's also been a challenge that a lot of investors actually joined in 2019, so they actually didn't have time to build up the profits by investing in loans, and many of them, unfortunately, and they end up with recoveries which are maybe, at least with a portfolio which is at risk of like maybe significant part of the portfolio. That doesn't mean like for us it's the same. So we have to work. What we do, we work on the recoveries as much as we we expect to recover as much as we can possibly. So obviously it's not going to be 100%, but we do our best to recover as much as possible. And we obviously, throughout this, the more data we get, the more we also can actually tailor our processes. So we now launched the Mintos Rich Score, which is something new. We completely redesigned what we had before, focusing on those aspects which we believe, based on our 6 years of experience, which are the most crucial when you look at the investments in loans. We also obviously improved the recovery processes. We're looking into the ways which didn't work, for instance, someone's legal setups or something. So it's constant work, but you have to put all that in context. So, and when you look at that, any asset class, and perhaps similar to you guys, but well, also applies to all the asset class, you have to look long term. You know, it's hard to say that what is expected return of the asset class in the kind of dips or when everything is going fine. So you have to look through the whole business cycle. And for us, we have to see perhaps a business cycle is, I don't know, 10 years at least. So these days when the business cycles get longer, so you have to look even longer. So, and that's why you have to build a diversified portfolio. You have to realize that it is something which is capital at risk. There might be some potential losses, and it should be part of the diversified total investment portfolio.
Yeah, it's exactly what people should do, and that's also some education content and thing we should do, both platforms, and every single new platform which is democratizing an asset class should make that kind of and should work on that education of investors. Investors should know that you need hundreds and thousands of loans. In your case, it's sometimes thousands of them, and same with the startups. So a clear message from both of us. Jumping to different topic. So this year has been challenging for everyone. Any company has been threatened by the pandemic, obviously. And I was just curious how that affected you guys. What was behind the scenes in Mintos offices? How was that months? How were that months handled from a team perspective? How are you working now? Are you completely remotely? I guess so, as many of us as are. And if you take some measures, or are you seeing some bounce back now into the marketplace, some more confidence from investors or something like that?
Sure. So we expected in 2020 to continue on a growth path, significant growth path. So we had built actually all the team and everything with expectations that 2020 gonna be follows the same growth path which we have had before, which is basically doubling every year. So very early in March, or I would say even late February, we saw that because we have a huge investor base, we saw the first kind of signs of that something is happening with the confidence of investors, and that definitely fell through the roof, or basically through the ground, early March. Basically, the liquidity dried up. Investors were not confident about the future in general, and we had to basically replan the whole short-term strategy, which basically meant that we refocused on the current business. So we unfortunately had to let go some of the people which we had hired with the intention that we're going to grow. We refocused all the attention on the current loan supply, on working with investors and so forth. And then I would say in the last few months, I would say starting from something September, October, we definitely see a bounce back. It bounced back already after March, April bounced back a bit, and now
same here.
So like October and then September as well, it's kind of we see the bounce back and investor confidence coming back, which is obviously to a large extent fueled by the same macro environment. Now also the vaccines coming into the kind of site and all this stuff. So we expect that 2021 to be much stronger than 2020, definitely. And also 2020, actually, we're going to end up with still a growth in 2020. It's just not going to be the growth which we perhaps expected before the pandemic hit. So it's still going to be growth. So what we based on the 10 months revenue, and then now half in the November, we're definitely going to beat the 2020 when it comes to revenue. So overall, I'm very positive about the 2021, and then with the help of licenses and with kind of the the economic crisis, and then obviously health crisis also subsiding. So we see that the returning to the significant growth path.
Yep, especially for digital business and digital platforms like us. I think we are getting stronger through these days, all of us.
And we are, you said, are we working remotely? Yeah. Well, that's actually part of, but for us, it didn't change anything. So we always had this culture of work from home. So those who wanted to work from home, now with the pandemic, so many actually people were able to, or not really were able, but just tested how it is to work from home. So many actually do like it, and I expect that many will continue work. Many actually realize that work from home is not something for them. So I see for us it's going to be kind of hybrid model going forward. So people coming to the office, people spending time maybe more working from home. But we actually, to be honest, we had people working from home already before. Now it's we still keep our office open. But now in Latvia, we have 3 offices. One is in Riga, in Germany, and in Riga, Berlin, and Vilnius. So the main is in Riga office. So Riga office is, I'm still now in the office, but most of the people actually are working remotely.
Yeah, met some of them all in different places. So pretty nice. So we obviously we're talking about fundraising. This webinar is about fundraising. Potentially one of the easiest webinars we've had at Crowdcube, with a company 6 times overfunded, you guys, with close to 6,000 investors. So an easy one to tackle. You guys are gonna smash it during the last days. I'm pretty sure about that. Some investors are asking. We have already some questions that we will go through later on. But one of the key questions is, what's your plan for spending this money on, and also what's your plans with venture capital, institutional investors? Have you been in touch with them, and what do you think that they can bring to Mintos, and what's the status on that? Because this is a crowdfunding round which will be allocated into Mintos, with potentially in the future some more bigger investors. And I'm sure many investors will love to know a bit more about that.
Sure. So when it comes to fundraising, so the crowdfunding is part of our total fundraising strategy. So much bigger part of the funds, like money-wise, will come from the venture capital. Well, we expect to come from venture capital. So we planned launch around early next year. So once we secure the licenses, with the fundraising, what we will expect to do is to basically put the licenses we get into the use. So it means reaching more customers, and then also building out new products. So that's what we're going to do with the fundraising. When it comes to the crowdfunding, definitely was very. We all were very thrilled about the results, and the support from the community, and that's something which actually many of investors have been asking us throughout the year. So can they own part of Mintos equity? So, and we were very happy to give this opportunity to investors to participate and join us in our journey, which is still at the very beginning in our opinion. So there's a lot of things ahead of us. And then when it comes to venture capital, so that's obviously with institutional funds, venture capital funds. So we are already in kind of conversations with many of them, but we will launch the kind of formal process early next year. And then basically with the total fundraising which we will have raised, so we will put the licenses which we have got into the use. So that's our game plan for the next few years.
Great, and I gotta say, you've been pretty effective on spending your cash. So far, you raised, before this round, if I'm not wrong, you raised circa 7 million euros for growing.
Yeah. So most of our growth, so we've been revenue generating from day one. We've always been looking after our costs, so keeping them in check. And most of our growth on the investor side has been through word of mouth. So we haven't spent too much on paid acquisition. The team is also, we have kept it efficient and so forth. So most of the growth we actually have been, as you say, we've been able to support by our own revenue. So with little outside capital, but to get to the next stage, to really put it in the next gear. So now when we see, okay, there's like much bigger opportunity ahead of us. So definitely the capital is something which we have to deploy so that we can build hopefully a much bigger organization in the future and bring more value to both retail investors and also to the lending lending companies and subsequently the borrowers.
Yeah, and I'm sure you will do that with the brand ambassadors team of thousands of people now joining Mintos, which is great and which is why we're here. So Martin, thank you very much for that. Those were most of the questions because I see there are a couple, many questions already here in the Q&A. 22, I think, yeah, we have the same ones. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to go through them and I can jump in when there's something related to Crowdcube? I guess that would be the best option, right?
Yeah. Well, or you can, as a host, you can ask me them. So I think that
okay.
We can just go one by one and
yeah, I'll do that. So we have the first question by recent. We put it by recent. Yeah, from Paul. It says Crowdcube investors are paying 6.12 euros per share. What is the chance that VCs will buy big volume of shares at lower price than 6.12, so the current share price?
Yeah, I think at this stage, obviously, it's going to depend on the negotiations. So we expect to start the process with VCs early next year. So I think at this stage it's kind of premature to comment on the valuation which we're gonna go with the VC. So will depend on the negotiations with them and where we are at that given stage. So that's I guess
difficult one to answer now before
it's actually difficult. Yeah. But I mean, the key here perhaps is just to emphasize that the VCs are not participating now in the crowdfunding. So all the shares bought are by our community. So there's no VCs participating at this stage. So we actually wanted to give the opportunity first to our community and then actually reach out to the VCs.
Yeah, and you have also explained a couple of slides in your deck explain how you reach your valuation.
Yeah, all is available. Yeah.
Second question.
We should go by top questions actually, not
questions. I'm now in top questions. Yeah. The next one is from Mr. S, which asks, will Mintos bank accounts be part of European deposit guarantee, and will they be full Mintos accounts or accounts by other bank with Mintos name or brand?
It's the bank account is not under deposit guarantee. We are not becoming a bank, so we are becoming electronic money institutional license. That means that all the money which is sitting in electronic money institutional license is fully segregated for us, and that's how kept with either commercial bank or the central bank, and that's always available for uninvested money, which is basically not put into the loans or any other assets. It's basically available for the customers. So that's how that works. So we are not pursuing bank license, which would then put the bank's accounts under the deposit guarantee. Yeah. But it's still fully segregated, always available for the customers.
Okay, thank you, Martins. So Paul has a couple of questions here. One of those is related to Crowdcube. Well, now it's not there. The drop off.
I think the first one we didn't cover now about the maximum equity.
Yeah, sorry. Now it's on the top. What is maximum equity you will give now in this equity round? Yeah, equity round.
So we are discussing this internally. We're definitely gonna close soon. So that's also what we're gonna announce in the next few days, I guess. But announce about when we're gonna start closing, but we will we internally having discussed, so it's gonna end up so we're gonna close at something like, if we reach it, then 7 million, maybe 7.5. So there's still some shares left, but basically we have more than kind of beat our targets with crowdfunding, and we still want to give opportunity to all the community which want to invest, but basically there's a limit how much we will allocate equity to the investors at Crowdcube.
Okay. Yeah, we will share soon together with Mintos the last days. Well, it's about Paul has some questions about drop off or cooling off period, mentioning free trade case, which it's not right, I think, Paul. But anyway, yeah, there's a small drop off during the cooling off period.
Yeah, I think this is more question to you.
I can cover this one. So yeah, there will be a 7-day cooling off period when Mintos campaign closes, and some of investors will receive a notification from our completions team. And I will use this opportunity to ask you, please, to provide all documents if they are required for anti-money laundering purposes. So we usually have some drop off at the end, not much. Historically, it's between 2 and 4%. In this case, we have investors from 90 countries. We are already working on KYC and anti-money laundering checks on every investor. So I'm sure if you have invested already on Mintos, you will have an email from our team. But definitely it will not be 50%. I can tell you that. I think in the free trade case was because they split it in 2 pitches, and that was different pitch to reflect some of the funds, and maybe that affected to the progress bar in one of those. But definitely that's not the case, 50% drop off. Another question that Paul has is, what is the gross decline of active investors with at least 100 euros currently invested on Mintos during the first 10 months of 2020 year over year? It's a tricky one.
I'm not going to have it top of my head, but I can talk about the general trends. Is that what we saw is that when the March hit, and then the confidence about the general future hit, and then also obviously when the more loans went into the recoveries, that also of course didn't help with the confidence of investors. So in general there were some kind of scaling back of investments, but overall though the number of active investors have been continuing to increase. It's been slower than previously, but it continues to increase. And there's also a fact that we actually stopped our paid acquisition because we are focusing on the current business instead of like on the growth. So we didn't do any paid acquisition starting from March. So that also had an effect. So overall, active investors continue to increase, maybe at a slower pace now when the with the kind of October, November, and the kind of vaccines in sight and the regulation coming into the play as well. So we expect it to pick up again.
Okay, so Mr. S would like to know if the platform will be offering safer investments soon. I guess that's a Mintos platform, not the Crowdcube.
Yeah, it's definitely on our plans, and it was already before pandemic. So it's to bring more loan supply, to bring lower risk, and well, it's always lower risk comes with a lower return. So obviously when we talk about double-digit returns, like which investors have seen on Mintos, like 12, 13, 14%, of course they do come with the risk, and there's going to be expected default, especially when the economic crisis hits. So you're going to see more so. When we talk about the lower risk loans and lower return loans, so we are perhaps talking about like 5, 6, 7% returns. But then also the risk is significantly lower, so you would not expect to have that much expected default even when the economic crisis hit. So we're gonna work on that, and then well, it's also gonna depend on the uptake from investors. So our job is to put it on the marketplace, offer all sorts of different loans, but then it definitely depends on the preference of investors. So previously, maybe when we put lower risk loans, some of the investors, not that many investors picked them up. Maybe now I think that with kind of reconsidering the risk profiles and so forth, so there might be more uptake for the lower risk, lower return loans.
Yeah, indeed, and you need to have those options. That's right. Alex is asking about he's an unexperienced investor, and he will like to know how he can make money with this investment. I think he's referring to the Crowdcube or Crowdcube investment into Mintos or buying shares into Mintos. So Alex, this is a high risk investment, as we stated at the beginning of this call. These are high risk companies, growing companies who can generate potential big returns, and also you might lose your capital. This is a non-liquid asset as well. So you should invest as part of a diversified portfolio. So please take that into account and read information on Crowdcube about Mintos and the risk warnings as well before making an investment. And how many people are you planning on hiring in the coming months, Martins?
It's basically also going to depend. So what we are now is, as I said, so all the fundraising is combined together. So we are first crowdfunding, focusing on that, then the venture capital. So that's also a function of how it goes with the venture capital. So in the coming months, so we definitely have positions open, but the kind of the general strategy or more kind of significant strategy going to be depending on how it goes with the venture capital round.
Okay.
So the coming months we will continue filling the positions which we need. So today we are about 150, a bit more than 150 people. So we'll continue hiring, but obviously the more strategic shift in that will be once we finish the fundraising round.
Okay. So there is an additional 5x overfunding than the initial target. I can take this one for you, Martins, if you want, or you can add anything if you wish.
Yeah, but, I think you know, but
yeah. So usually companies can raise in between X amount and Y amount, and they decide this threshold. And that threshold is decided whether you want to give more or less equity or shares. So if Mintos now is raising 5 times more than their initial target, they are giving away 5 times more equity and shares than the initial offering. So at the moment, you can see on Mintos page on Crowdcube that they have raised 6 million euros, and that equals to 8.2% of the equity. So yeah, the question is, the more you raise, the more equity you give away as a company. About the valuation, we just went through a bit the valuation, but it's good to tackle this question. What is the asset under administration increase decline during the first 10 months of 2020 year over year? That's a question from Paul.
Instead of year over year, I guess what we would look at is before pandemic and now. So the peak was at the February. The best is actually just to head to Mintos marketplace and look up in the statistics page. So overall, we saw about like 20 to 30% drop, which is now basically picking up. So that's what we saw from the peak to the kind of lowest point was about like 20 to 30%. But the best is actually really to look at our statistics page.
Okay, another one about the statistics from Paul is the decline that you had in SimilarWeb in visits from user visits. How much do you think that was from direct traffic versus termination of paid advertising, maybe?
Definitely, the paid advertising is something which we did and started to do before the pandemic. So I would say that actually, based on the fact that through paid advertising we had about like 20, maybe 30% of registrations before pandemic, so that would coincide perhaps with this decline in visits through SimilarWeb. I would have to look up. I mean, this is another kind of specific question. Would have to look up like specifically, but sure. I would say a big part is paid advertising for sure.
Okay, thanks, Martins. So another one about the successful crowdfunding raise. It's going better than expected. And so are you planning to introduce more improvements to the Mintos platform earlier than you planned with this money?
It's a good question, but actually with this money, we plan to kind of execute on the roadmap. So what we already had in mind, we continue executing and we are working on that. So, and we bring new things to the platform. Well, not maybe weekly, but quite often. So the same mobile app, we just pushed out a new version today, I think. Then all the risk scores which we announced lately, like multiple smaller improvements and features. The strategy, I mean, it's ongoing work, so it's a lot of work which goes into the product. So all in all, of 150 people which we are here, so about like 50 people work on product and engineering. with the fundraising. So we will obviously invest more and continue investing more in the products. So it's not necessarily that they will be earlier, but there will be perhaps more things which come on the product. And the product is never done. So all the time. So our backlogs are huge. There's a lot of things which we definitely are already working on. There's a lot of things which we will working on, and then unfortunately there's like plenty and many of things which we won't be able to do even in the long term. So the backlog and the needs and wants are like huge. So the fundraising, both crowdfunding and then also depending how it goes with venture capital. So the venture capital as well will help us to improve the product. So that's part of actually why we are fundraising for sure.
Okay, there is a question about Mintos notes. By being a separate properties asset, which cannot be part of bankruptcy asset in case of bankruptcy of Mintos. If they assume it's a Mintos SPV, will be like that.
Yeah, this is part of the. This is perhaps less related to the crowdfunding specifically. Yeah. It's a technical question about what we do. What we will do here, basically, when we become an investment firm, so we're going to transform the loans into the notes, and then they will be investors will be investing in financial instruments in the notes, and the notes will be one-on-one pegged to the underlying loans, and then they will be issued by the Mintos SPV, which is separate from the Mintos.
Okay.
On that though, so the best is to follow our blog. So we keep posting information there, and we will keep doing that so that investors basically can learn about the process and about the setup before we actually become the investment firm. And once we become, there's also going to be transitional period. Okay. So there will be plenty of opportunities to learn more about all this.
Sure. Paul says that, well, you have provided revenues from last 10 months plus November, December forecast. Could you share, he asked if you could share revenues growth in percentage from 2020 10 months fact alone?
Well, yeah, it's basically, it's divided by more or less divided by 12 or so. So I think with October we already passed or close to being past the 2019 revenue. So although what we share is what we can, and we also have to realize that we as a market leader, as a platform, so obviously the crowdfunding, sure, it's a community, but as you might guess, so there's also the competition, which is really going on the crowdfunding and getting all the same information out there. So there is limit how much we can put out there. Also, there's a limit how much we can actually say about the future and so forth. So we do our best to put the information which we believe is sufficient. So all the information is out there in the pitch decks, which are under restricted documents. Also, there's what we can put on the pitch page as well, and then that basically serves as an entry point for the information which we can put out there. So we totally understand people wanting to have all the in and outs of Mintos, and that's understandable. But unfortunately, to some extent, crowdfunding, especially in our case, when it's already like 5,000-6,000 investors, it sort of becomes very public. So we have to be cognizant of that and understand that there's of course also indirect competitors or maybe somebody who wants to just do something exactly what we do. So we have to limit how much we can actually share.
Be sure there are competitors.
On the historic. So actually the best is again just to head to our website. So transparency has been one of the key values of ours since day one. So we put, even though we don't need to, so we put all the annual reports out there. So all of them audited by Ernst & Young, all of them available on our website. So you can look them up and with all the detailed notes and so forth. So that's the best actually to proceed. So about the historic financials.
Great. Martins, what's the regulator license you're applying for, and in which country are you doing that?
So it's two. So one is the investment firm license, is basically becoming the brokerage, and then the other one is the electronic money institution license. We are applying here in our home country, basically where the headquarters are. This is in Riga, well, in Latvia country, and then but these days actually it's not that relevant which country, because you can actually passport, and we will passport the licenses across Europe. Unfortunately, well, with the Brexit, that means the UK most likely going to be excluded, but overall, you actually passport across all the countries in Europe.
Okay.
Shall we take last two questions or something?
Yeah, for sure. For the rest, for the other ones, let's just, maybe we can do a post or anything covering some other questions later on, but
yeah, or we can do it on the discussion. So our team is following all the discussions on the pitch page, so definitely you can ask the questions there, and we're happy to post answer there as well.
So let's take two last questions from Mr. S, and now anonymous. Could Mintos offer quick ways to transfer money in and out?
That actually depends on the in general, they are actually very quick, I would say. So and that depends also on what is the bank from which we send the money and what is the receiving bank. So in many cases, it's actually instant SEPAs. So when it comes to Europe, so it should be happening immediately, both in and outs. And then in some cases, it might be longer, but in general, it's actually, we haven't heard investors being unsatisfied with how quick they are. Overall, they're actually rather quick.
No, and actually, I've experienced that, and it depends, as you say, on countries also, and the method. Yeah. About, well, this is actually for investors in Mintos shares, in the crowdfunding round. Is there any way to increase the initial amount of invested in Mintos shares as Crowdcube, or should we buy a second time with it to increase? Well, you can invest again, and that will aggregate. That investment will be aggregated in your initial investment through Crowdcube. So yeah, and the payment capture will be in single capture. So don't worry about having two captures or anything like that. And so yeah, I think we had 14 questions left that we will address on the pitch page on Crowdcube. So please stay tuned to that page if your question hasn't been answered. And Martins, thanks a lot for spending an hour with me this time, and with all the people who joined the webinar. I need, and I'm forced and obligated to disclose again an important message, which is, please invest where your capital is at risk. This is an illiquid asset class, and you should invest as part of a diversified portfolio. And read the information before investing. Make questions. Feel free to make questions on Mintos discussions forum, and they will be more than happy to answer, as they have been doing although during the week. And our team will be answering also some questions if that's related to Crowdcube platform. So Martins, thanks a lot again. It's been a pleasure to keep digging into Mintos. Congratulations on the amazing business you built, to you and to the rest of the team you have on Mintos. I've met some of them, and it's really amazing team. So congrats on that, and congrats also on the raise on Crowdcube.
Thanks, Pepe. Thanks for joining. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the hosting, and see you around, I guess.
Yeah, see you later.
Okay, take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Cheers.